we're back. So last time, as you may or may not recall, we had gotten our GraphQL server basically working. We were showing how we can return data and nested data. And now the next step is to actually plug this code into Unity. And so let's take a look at how that might be. We'll start by taking a look at the old Unity project here. And as we can see, we have our game board up and we have our debug window. Let's take a look at what our scripts are looking like right now. Right now you'll see that when it's time for us to load in a level, let's go to the game controller and look at the level loading code. And you can see it's here in create level, where we go through, we look at the level, and we go through and parse it. And so where do we do this? Well, during the load of the game, when the first instantiate this game object, we load the levels. And when we do that, right now, it's just going through this JSON level file, which is this file here. So to make this thing work off of a server, what we want to do is just change that so that instead of loading off of a file, it loads it from GraphQL. So what we need to do is to write the code here inside load level that loads from GraphQL. So let's just go ahead and see how we might do that. So I have no idea how we do this offhand. My naive assumption would be that because this is just .NET in Unity, we can probably just call normal .NET HTTP files and do a GET against the server and grab the data that way. But because this is Unity and because there's a big ecosystem, there's probably a better way. So what I normally do when I want to do something new in Unity, the first thing anyway, what the heck is this? The first thing to do is to see what already exists. So why don't we go to the asset store, and there's probably already a GraphQL component. So we'll go ahead and search for GraphQL, and what we find is there is none. Well, no problem. So the next thing that we can try is to search for GraphQL Unity. And look, this is very promising. GraphQL client, GitHub. Let's see what we got here. Here's a nice article, trying out GraphQL with Unity 3D Engine. GraphQL is amazing. Demo fields, very quick. Loading. Do this type of thing a lot. Oh, look at this. GraphQL client. So, first thing I do is use the GraphQL script from GraphQL Unity client package. That sounds like a package that we need. Let's go take a look at that. Gesundheit, GraphQL client Unity. Well, once again, this looks quite perfect. Let's go to this page and download this sucker. Done. Now let's import this into Unity. So let's take a peek here. Let's get our main Unity window back on the screen. I'm going to dock this game window back in so that we can be on a single monitor here for everybody at home to better play around. And we're going to go over to the package manager and we're going to import a new package. Add package from disk. This should already be in our downloads folder. Whoa, look at this crazy view here. Who's messing with this? Well, I would have thought it would have been there. Let's see where this thing's at. We'll go to our file system here. It's right here at Unity package. Package.json file. Well, our file is not a package.json. It is just a Unity package. Let's see what it does if we just click on it. Hey, look at that. It has generously provided us with this very nice thing here. Some demo scripts. It has JSON.NET built into it, which will help us for parsing our JSON. It has our various plugins, async wait. Pokemon schema, user schema. This must be for sample data. HTTP handler, introspection. That all sounds very good. Well, what the heck? Let's just import it all and see what it does. While it's doing that, this might be a good time to read the documentation on this bad boy. How it works. It uses introspection to get the query. We have a scriptable object here. We can create an API object to talk to it. Here we go. Right click on our asset folder, create GraphQL client API reference. Well, that sounds extremely easy. Hopefully it actually is just that easy, and we should be done in no time. One of the great things about doing development these days is the fantastic community between open source, plugins, Stack Exchange, GitHub. You pretty much can find any code that you want, no matter what it is. Okay, let's close this thing. And then it said to click on the asset folder and to try to create a new thing. Well, that sounds pretty good to me. So let's create a new folder here. We can call it GQL so we know what's going on there. And I can see our GraphQL client thing here. And create, my goodness, look at this, GraphQL API reference. That is awesome. I give it a URL. Well, ours is just localhost, so hopefully that'll work without any problem. I think we're at 4,000, right? Let's flip back to our IntelliJ and see what we have there. And we should probably want to be running. Let's fire up the old server quick. Yep, localhost 4000, our old friend. And we can go to the GraphQL playground and just make sure that everything's working here. Yeah, sure enough. Okay, so back to Unity. Localhost 4000. Let's give it a shot. We did the introspection and didn't really see anything. Ah, it's done. Look at this. We can create a new query. I'm going to call it get the levels, query levels. You see that it has this here, and it returns levels. Let's confirm it. Wow, that's cool. If we had a more complex query, no doubt it might be a little bit more exciting. Let's see if we can test that. Do they have a test? Let's go back to the documentation and take a peek. So we create a query. We can preview a query simply clicking the Preview Query button at the bottom of the query. I don't see anything at the bottom of the query. Free field, delete, no. Well, that's mysterious. Not sure how exactly that works. What if we create a new query? Oh, I'm so silly. Create field, it wants to know what we want to return. So let's go, we want the ID. We want the name, and let's see, we want the description, of course. And I'm going to need the sheep. And for the sheep, I'm going to need the xloc. I'm going to need the zloc. And for the field itself, I'm going to need the width. And I'm going to need the height. Now we can preview query. That looks good. Query get the levels. So now what we should be able to do to test this is we should be able to put this directly, this exact same text directly into our client, our GraphQL client, and see if it works. Unfortunately, it appears that this is not selectable. But it does look like it's forming a very nice query here. So let's see how that does it. So now that we have that defined, let's go back to our documentation and say, hey, we have this. It looks cool. How do we stick this in here? So we have to reference it. We use GraphQL and we have our Graph API. And then we have something to get this request. Interesting. Looks really good. Let's post this in, shall we? We'll copy this over. We're going to go back to our Visual Studio. Looks like it did some serious reload there, so we will take that up from the disk. And in our game controller, let's see if we can actually do this. We'll post those in. We'll call this WTF GQL reference. Well, so far so good. No errors finding this stuff, which means it must be installed properly. And then let's see how we call it. This looks good. Let's just make our own version of that get Pokemon call, shall we? We'll call it this is going to have to be our script, I guess, here, right? Whatever we called it. We called it get the levels. And we go back to Visual Studio. Okay, so looks like we have a couple missing things here. One is this does not seem to exist, so we have to figure out how we're actually supposed to reference this. Let's see how they referenced it in their file, shall we? Okay, so they actually just drag and drop it on in there. Well, that's pretty straightforward Unity style. So we have this public level reference. Sounds good. We have our thing here. Let's go to our Game Manager object, find our level reference, which is currently not there, and bind it. So now, hopefully we have that. Back to Visual Studio. Now we should have that posted, get the level. Now it seems like Unity web request cannot be found. So let's see where this is supposed to be. GraphQL client.core and Pokemon reference we have, but what about the Unity web request? Unity engine.networking. All right. All right, there we go. I've never used Unity web request before, but let's just see if it has some data in it and how we're supposed to get it. Perhaps they have an example here of how this works. Look at that, perfect. So now I want to see what the heck this thing is. What better way than the old debug log, our favorite command. So now when we load our levels, we'll get the level from the server. It should theoretically execute that query we specified and give us the data. Well, let's see if that actually works. This will be pretty exciting. First, let me get our output window going here so we can actually see it. And I'm just going to pin this bad boy to the bottom here so we can see it with our game. And now let's just run it and see what happens. And look at this. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's pull this out here. And what we can see is that we got this data here. It looks pretty darn good. It got the xlok, it got the zlok. It's the exact data that we have in our thing. And I think that we're in pretty good shape now. All right, well, total success. We're going to save our work. Of course, we have to exit the game to do that. And there we go. We have our query actually plugged into Unity. It's talking to GraphQL. It's not loading all the levels yet, but that's okay because we don't have real levels in there anyway. But it looks like we can get that data for sure, and we can call it during our game. So really, the next step is to actually put some real levels in, which means connecting it to a database. So in the next episode, why don't we make a SQL database that holds levels and then connect that to our GraphQL server. So we can fetch some real levels. Once we have that, we'll change our function here to load them from the server. Great. Thank you very much for watching.